You might be confused about how so many committees, reports, and laws fit together when we study electoral reforms for the UPSC exam. And that confusion can make memorizing facts feel impossible. By the end of this video, you will be completely clear about the main committees, the reforms they prompted, and how to link these changes to exam questions. Today, we will walk step by step from early committee recommendations to the most recent changes, focusing on the practical points UPSC asks about and on the one key idea most aspirants miss. And towards the end, we will understand a key idea that most UPSC aspirants miss. First, think of electoral reform as a long conversation between civil society, expert committees, the Election Commission, the courts, and Parliament, where committees make proposals and later some become law. In the 1970s, a joint parliamentary committee looked at election laws and set the tone for later formal reviews. And during the mid-1970s, Jayaprakash Narayan's 13th committee pushed for broader democratic fixes amid political turmoil. Moving ahead, the Dinesh Goswami Committee in 1990 gave a large set of reform ideas which led to important legislative changes in 1996, especially to clean up candidate lists and nomination rules. The Vaha Committee in 1993 examined the worrying crime politics nexus and influenced subsequent rules on criminal antecedent disclosures and candidate conduct. The Indrajit Gupta Committee in 1998 recommended state funding of elections to reduce dependence on private money, a recommendation that remains debated and relevant for exam essays. Several Law Commission reports, notably the 170th, 244th, and 255th, and the National Commission to Review the Working of the Constitution, examined systemic legal fixes, often providing the legal drafts that Parliament later considers. The Election Commission itself has issued major reform proposals in different years, and administrative bodies like the Second Administrative Reforms Commission also stressed electoral ethics and transparency. Now let's group reforms into 4 clear periods so you can remember them as chunks. Before 1996, the reforms of 1996, changes after 1996, and reforms since 2010. Before 1996, we saw foundational steps. The voting age was lowered from 21 to 18, electoral roll staff could be deputed to the Election Commission, and measures to prevent frivolous candidates were introduced. Electronic voting machines were authorized and trialed in the late 1990s. The Election Commission started issuing photo identity cards to stop bogus voting, and laws addressed booth capturing by allowing adjournment or countermanding of polls. The 1996 package, built from the Goswami recommendations, changed candidate listing rules, clarified who needs proposers, penalized insults to national honor, stopped countermanding elections on the death of a candidate in many cases, and regulated campaign timing and liquor sales near polling. Key 1996 rules also limited candidates to 2 constituencies, made arms near polling stations a cognizable offense, and ensured employees could get a holiday on polling day so turnout would not suffer. After 1996 reforms added practical tools. Presidential election proposal limits were raised, staff could be requisitioned for election duty, postal ballots and proxy voting were expanded for service voters, and candidates had to declare criminal records and assets on affidavits. Significant Rajya Sabha changes removed domicile requirements and introduced an open ballot method to curb cross-voting. And the law exempted campaigning leaders' travel from candidate expense limits in certain cases. Since 2010, reforms accelerated with technology and transparency measures. Nota and VVPAT were introduced, exit poll restrictions tightened, online enrollment was enabled, and voting rights for many Indians abroad were recognized. The court-led debates of 2013 led to immediate disqualification rules for convicted MPs and MLAs. And Parliament later proposed but then withdrew bills attempting to alter the court decision, which is an important constitutional tension to note for UPSC. The 2017 and 2018 financial reforms changed political funding. Anonymous cash donation limits were drastically lowered. Corporate donation caps were removed. Electoral bonds were launched, and foreign funding rules were relaxed, all of which are hot topics in governance and public policy questions. The Election Laws Amendment of 2021 allowed linking electoral rolls to the Aadhaar ecosystem, set multiple qualifying dates for rolls, and made language in laws gender neutral, showing how administrative tweaks can have big operational effects. For UPSC, focus on 3 exam smart points. Which committee made which recommendation, which recommendations were enacted into law, and why some major proposals like state funding remain contested. In mains or ethics, electoral bonds, VVPAT, nota, criminal antecedent disclosures, and the Representation of the People Act amendments are frequently tested, so have quick definitions and the timeline ready. A useful memory trick is to connect a committee name to one headline reform. For example, Goswami to 1996 nomination and disclosure changes, Indrajit Gupta to state funding, and Vara to crime politics nexus. Also remember the implementation path: committee report, election commission recommendations, judicial interventions, and finally, parliamentary law, because questions often probe that sequence. Now for the key idea most aspirants miss. Committees suggest wide reforms, but implementation depends on political will, judicial review, and administrative capacity. So recommendations are not the same as settled law. Keep that distinction clear in answers and you will score better by showing process awareness, not just listing committee names and dates. Quick recap. Memorize the big committees. Group reforms into the 4 periods we used, and prioritize recent high-impact changes like nota, VVPAT, electoral bonds, and the 2021 amendments. Exam tip. When asked about electoral reforms, always link recommendations to outcomes and write one short line on implementation challenges or constitutional checks. You are doing the right thing by breaking this down into chunks, and revisiting these timelines 2 or 3 times will make them click during the exam. If you want a one-page cheat sheet, focus on committee name, year, one key recommendation, and whether it became law. That is the quickest revision tool for UPSC. Keep practicing with past year questions on electoral reforms and compare model answers to spot where process and implementation were missed. If you found this clear and helpful, continue your revision with EduRev for structured notes, timelines, and quick tests designed for UPSC preparation. Join the EduRev course to access condensed summaries, daily quizzes on electoral reforms, and model answers tailored for mains and interview preparation. Good luck, stay consistent, and remember that clarity about process wins marks more often than memorizing isolated facts.